November 1945, Labour government came into power in England and it announced that a constituent assembly for India will be constituted. So on March 15, 1946, the cabinet mission came to India and in the course of its stay recommended the framing of constituent assembly as well as an interim government. It was decided that constituent assembly was to be elected indirectly by the provincial assemblies. According to the plan, the provinces of British India were grouped into three categories: A, B, and C. Each province was allotted seats on the basis of the population in the ratio of one member for a million. The seats given to a province were decided among three communities on the basis of their number, the three communities being the Muslims, Sikhs, and the general, including Hindus and all others who were not Muslims and Sikhs. They were to be elected by representatives of each community in their respective legislative assemblies by the method of proportional representation with single transferable vote. The number of members allotted to the Indian states was also to be fixed on the same basis of population as adopted for British India, but the method for their selection was to be settled later by the consultation. The strength of constitution making body was to be 389. Of these, 296 representatives were to be from British India, 292 representatives drawn from the 11 governors provinces of British India, and a representative each from the 4 chief commissioners provinces of Delhi, Ajmer, Marwar, Coorg, and British Baluchistan, and 93 representatives from the Indian states. The states representatives were to be nominated by the respective rulers. Elections for the 296 seats assigned to the British Indian provinces were completed by July-August 1946. The Congress won 208 seats, including all the general seats except 9, and the Muslim League 73 seats, that is all but 5 of the seats allotted to the Muslims. So the 93 seats meant for the states representatives remained vacant, and princely states decided not to participate in the Constituent Assembly. However, representatives of some of the states like Baroda, Bikaner, Jaipur, Patiala, Rewa, and Udaipur entered the assembly by April 1947, and by August 15, 1947, and soon after, all the states had sent their representatives to the assembly. The assembly was, however, not able to start its work immediately as Jinnah withdrew his acceptance and caused the Muslim League to boycott it. The Congress went ahead with its plan and appointed an expert committee to draft fundamental rights and arrange an early session of the assembly. The party also accepted the Viceroy's invitation to form an interim government with Jawaharlal Nehru as Prime Minister. The Constituent Assembly opened on December 1946 in the Constitution Hall, now the Central Hall of Parliament House at New Delhi. Jawaharlal Nehru moved the historic objective resolution on December 13, 1946, after it had been in session for some days. The resolution envisaged a federal polity with the residuary powers vesting in the autonomous units and sovereignty belonging to the people. The resolution gave to the assembly its guiding principles and the philosophy of constitution making. By the end of January 1947, it was clear that there was no possibility of the Muslim Leagues joining the assembly. An uncompromising call for a separate constituent assembly for Pakistan had been given by Jinnah. So on June 26, 1947, Lord Mountbatten, the Governor General of India, announced the setting up of a separate constituent assembly for Pakistan. The Indian Independence Act 1947, passed with surprising speed, came into force on July 18, 1947. The Indian Independence Act 1947 declared the Constituent Assembly of India to be a fully sovereign body, and on the midnight of August 15, 1947, the Assembly assumed full powers of the governance of the country. Section 8 of the Act conferred on Constituent Assembly full legislative power. Evaluation of Assembly for India. The Assembly set up under Cabinet Mission Plan was a result of compromises made by the Congress on its ideological and philosophical sphere. The Assembly was not fully sovereign despite the efforts of the Congress, whereas The Congress demand was for a fully sovereign assembly, nor was it elected on the basis of universal adult franchise as the Congress had demanded. The Congress caved in to accept communal representation too, and the grouping plan for the provinces. It also went along with the limits imposed on the powers of central government, so the Constituent Assembly setup was quite far from what the Congress had demanded in the later years of the freedom struggle. The Constituent Assembly was indirectly elected by the provincial assemblies, which themselves were elected on the basis of a limited franchise as per the Government of India Act of 1935. The 35 Act imposed qualifications on the basis of tax, education. This kept out more than 70% of adult population from the voting. The Constituent Assembly thus reflected the composition of the provincial assemblies, in which the Congress had a comfortable majority, which rose to more than 80% of after partition. The composition of the assembly reflected the different ideological views present in the country at the time. There were socialists, the Marxian, as well as democratic variety. Both groups were opposed to private ownership of important means of production and wanted an egalitarian society, while the Marxian variety wanted a revolutionary reconstruction. It was the more moderate group, of which Nehru was a member, preferring peaceful parliamentary methods that held sway. Sardar Patel may be considered a leader of the rightist views supporting private enterprise. The rightist point of view was also represented by Purushottam Das Tandon and S.P. Mukherjee. There were also the Gandhians proposing decentralized village government through panchayats. All these viewpoints influenced the constitution to an extent, but the dominant influence was that of the liberals and the democratic socialists. After independence, with the independence of India on August 15, 1947, the Constituent Assembly became a sovereign body responsible for framing the constitution as well as making ordinary laws. Now the work of Constituent Assembly was organized into 5 stages. First, committees were required to present reports on basic issues. Second, Bengal Narsingh Rao, a judge of Calcutta High Court and also constitutional advisor of Constituent Assembly, prepared an initial draft on the basis of reports of these committees and on his own research into the constitution of other countries. Third, the drafting committee under the chairmanship of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar presented a detailed draft constitution which was published for public discussion and comments. Criticism and counter-criticism in the press in turn molded the nature of the consensus that was ultimately reached on specific issues. Fourth, the draft constitution